Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often. He'll wipe my tears. Only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember. The chaos in my mind turned my heart out in November. I'm surrounded by too many doors, not sure which way I entered. But I'm rocking with my loved ones, let you know that front and center. Found out my skin's tough as leather, I can storm through any weather. Addiction was the hardest battle I ever endeavored. It takes a lot of effort to apply all of this pressure. Being higher than propellers only drove me through the shredder. I need some hope right now. Can you spare some hope right now?
Welcome back to the Message is Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today we have Cesar in here with us. How you doing, Cesar?
I'm doing great, Mike.
Are you nervous?
You know what? Not anymore.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Let's chill real quick.
Yeah.
So we were hoping to get a message from you that would give some people hope. I know your message gives me hope.
Okay.
It gives Adam hope. And so we want to put it on a platform that'll help other people, you know. So where should we start, Adam?
What was it like for you growing up, bro?
What was it like?
Mm-hmm.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you for this gift, man. It's an honor to be here, to be asked to share my message. Man, it just reminds me that we're miracles. So I just want to start off there.
Amen.
Thank you. So, man, growing up as a little kid, being on a podcast right now, it's like I was always a little quiet kid.
Right.
Never felt like I had a voice. Never felt like I was needed anything to say. So it's an honor to be here to share.
Nice.
To share this message. So what was it like for as a little kid, man? I don't remember my cheerful days, happy, playing around. I do remember a few. I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley area, La Puente area. I do remember a scooter. I would go off on my own and go up and down the street, sidewalk with the scooter that I was given during Christmas time by one of my aunts. I do remember that being a really happy time in my child life. I grew up in a home where my mom rented from one of my aunts. It was a master bedroom. In that home lived my aunt and with my two other cousins and her husband, which is my uncle. I remember him being a mechanic and always drinking a beer, a Budweiser, a nice little Budweiser. And my grandma lived next door, a house they rented from my aunt. And in that house, I believe there was a total. My mom has a total of 10 sisters and 3 brothers.
Wow!
And it was a packed house. So I grew up with a lot of uncles and aunts, and giving me direction, telling me what to do is how I see it. It's right. What I looked at it growing up. I had an experience. That really took me in a place where I wasn't no more that cheerful kid riding up and down the street in a scooter, and so through a family member, I remember being touched by this family member at a really young age, and after that something happened, man. Where I remember something inside of me happened where I became very isolated. I remember still living in that home where during Christmas times or any events, I would just be very in a hurry to go and isolate in that master bedroom that my sister and my mom grew up, where we all grew up. And I don't want to leave out, it was just me and my sister and my mom in that master bedroom. My dad wasn't around. I never got to meet my dad. I heard a lot about him. I heard a lot of negativity about him growing up, that he didn't treat my sister or my mom so well. So I never got to know the man. And I believe that affected a lot, growing up. I had a lot of uncles that would try to guide me and lead me. And as a little kid, man, but I was spoiled. I would say I was spoiled, man, by all these family members. But there was something about me, and after that experience as a little kid, I started having a lot of what we call weird behaviors. Right. A lot of interaction with these behaviors after that experience with a family member. And for me, I believe that did a lot to me. So we finally moved out of this. My mom finally moved us out of that home, out of that master bedroom. And so what happened after that? We got our first apartment for the first time with my mom and my sister, and that's where I really took off on like not. I finally felt free to do what I wanted to do, right? This isolated little kid with no voice, didn't feel like I had anything good to say, right? It's where I started to have these outbursts of anger, like hatred towards my family members, my mom. My first experience with any drug was at the age of well, I'll move it back a little bit. My first sip of liquor was with my uncle when he would do his mechanic work. He would set his beer on the side, and I always remember looking at that beer. And there was one day where I took a sip. I was probably like 8 years old, 7. I was 10 years old when I moved into that first apartment with my sister and my mom. My mom was a hardworking woman. She would take the buses to work. She would get home late. I was left with my sister to take care of me. And I think I can see now today, being in recovery and working on myself, that I can appreciate what my mom, and I can remember going back, appreciating what my mom has done for me and my sister. Right. For years, I would always share that, oh yeah, my mom was this, my mom was that. She never did enough for us, right? And I never felt grateful for any of that. And after that, as I continued to work on myself, and I became, things started changing around. My perspective on how I grew up started changing, and today it's like it's different. And just right now I want to acknowledge, man, Adam, thank you for guiding me, bro. Thank you for showing me a new way to live, right? Thank you for sponsoring me, bro. It's been an honor. I remember meeting you back in program and having this experience that we had to have in order to be where I'm at today.
Right.
And that's tremendously a big impact in my walk today and what I'm doing for myself, right? So I can be a productive member of society, and so I can be a better, loving person towards myself, so I can give that back. So thank you.
Of course,
thank
bro.
you, man.
And first of all, I love you.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the experience, right? The psychic change happens when we work steps.
Yeah.
That's my experience, because I had that same view, right? I looked at my mom like she was this person, she was a horrible this, and it wasn't until like I got to pen and paper and wrote about it and spoke about it is when my view of my mother changed, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's when I realized, like, I forgot, like, it's what I understand today for me, bro, is I'm very pessimistic. I could pull one negative thing out of all these positive things and bring it to me and just focus on it, bro, right? And so for me, it's been like that since I was a kid, bro, right? And I share some of the same experience, bro. I was touched, it fucked me up, like all this stuff, right? And it wasn't until I got clean, and not just got clean, but when I got to work, is when like the view of the world kind of changed for me, right? And I think it's really important that people understand that there's a big difference between abstinence and recovery, right? Because most of us, bro, right, have had abstinence before. Most of us have been able to like put down the pipe, put down the bag, put down the syringe, put down the bottle for X amount of time, but that shit is only sufficient enough for so long before we end up right back to where we were, bro. You know what I'm saying? So as much as you thank me, it was you that did the work, bro. It was you that fucking cried. It was you that talked about some uncomfortable things. It was you that got honest and vulnerable. And, for anybody listening, all three of us, right? And our viewer Juan, right? All of us have
Studio audience.
Yeah, studio audience Juan, right? All of us have done the work.
Yeah.
Right. And because of that, we stick around, bro. And because of that, like, we had this psychic change where when I look back at my life, it it wasn't as bad as I made it out to be, bro. Right? It wasn't as tough as I made it out to be, but I didn't know what practicing acceptance was, practicing humility. I didn't know what any of that stuff was, right? So, you know, anybody who's fucking listening, man, this isn't just about like, how do I fucking put the pipe down or how do I put the bottle down, man? It's more like, how do I keep it down? How do I not go? How do I not return to that, bro? Anybody could get a job, but how do you keep a job? Anybody could get their kids back, but how do you keep your kids? Anybody could do any of those things, right? But how do you maintain those? How do you keep those things, right? And so, yeah, man. So I think just hearing your story, man, it reminds me of that, bro. I was the same way. I looked at my life like, oh, poor Adam. He lived such a horrible life. He was touched as a kid. He was abused. He was this. He was that. He grew up in a rough neighborhood. And today, man, like, it's like, I'm not saying that none of those things fucking suck, right? But my view of it's different, bro. I've learned how to accept it and move on from it.
Yeah.
So that psychic change, I can totally agree with. I wanted to ask you one thing, because I've had a psychic change when it comes to my father. And when my father wasn't around, I constantly thought as a child, must be something wrong with me. So did you feel that? Did you experience that growing up?
All my life, I had like a list in my head of everything that was wrong with me, right? And I had every excuse to blame, right? I didn't know that then, but the first one was, okay, being touched as a kid, right? The second one was a moderate disability that I was diagnosed, that a doctor told me you have moderate disability because I couldn't focus in school. I couldn't tend to retain anything in school, right? Maybe the third one was I was born into the wrong family, right? So all these things that I continue to pile up on myself, not having a father in my life. And I tell you today that through the steps and through being vulnerable, even with my own mother and asking her questions and being willing to ask her question, was about, like, just recently I was told that my actual dad came to visit me a month after I was born. Like, in my view that I ran with for so long, and I used as an excuse to blame, right, my mother, because all I thought was all like this bad person, right? But when I was told that, like, it gave me a whole different perspective of everything that I've been running with wasn't it, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, we hold on to those things to get loaded over.
Yeah.
You know,
We use
and
it
you
as
look
an
back
excuse,
and do some step work about it.
Self-hatred.
And you realize that it wasn't as bad as I was making it out to be.
No.
Yeah. So Cesar, when did you start to use to feel better, to drink to feel better? When did that start?
So I remember weed at the age of 11 years old. So it was so attractive to see my next door neighbors get arrested, or the ghetto birds, right? That was so attractive to me because my mom tried everything she could to keep me indoors and to keep me not out so late and running in the streets, right? But for some reason, it was so attractive to me that I did everything possible to go and meet our neighbors, right? Run with them, and because to me, they were everything. It was so exciting to see all that. So because I was attracted to that, I followed them. I was always a follower growing up. I never remember being a leader. I never remember giving my opinion about where should we go or what should we do. I never felt like I could say, oh, we shouldn't go there, right? So I remember going into this small shack next door over the wall, and beautiful girl they called, her name was Summer. And everyone followed her, right? Including me. Imagine that. Whatever it was, right? But being a follower, I remember going into that shack, and that neighborhood, the gang members in that neighborhood would go in there and smoke weed. And somebody finally asked me, you want to smoke something? I said, yeah, sure. It was awesome, man. I do remember going into those memories of those behaviors as I was touched as a kid, right? All that will resurface. And I never knew who I was, what I was. I didn't know if I was gay or not, right? I don't know, because I was so twisted in knowing my own who I was, and I had this twisted thinking of who I am based on what everybody told me growing up, right? Not having a dad, right? Well, God must have made a mistake, so He might have made a mistake with me. So that means like I was meant to be this other person. So anytime I did this drug, all this stuff resurfaced, and not knowing my sexuality. So that was always part of going into that. I felt like the drug always helped me feel accepted inside, because I was still this quiet kid with no voice, right, in my head, living in my head when I was using. So it was weed, man. It was weed. It was a good time living in my head. It always was. Yeah. Like I remember in that shack, man. I just felt like I was important, because they even asked me to come and smoke with them, right? Yeah. I was finally accepted. Finally, somebody paid attention to me and said my name and said, "Hey, come on with us," And ever since that, I took off with that, man. It wasn't until I really got into some heavy drug, which was meth, man. Prior to that, I had a lot of episodes where I would drink and I would have a lot of blackouts at a really young age. We lived upstairs, so I don't even know half the time how I got upstairs. And I had these behaviors for man, ever since I can remember, 10 years old. Once we moved into those apartments, man, my sister, she was my caretaker and she did what she could, but she couldn't keep me indoors. So every time my mom was at work late at night, going from bus to bus, by the time she got home, it was like maybe 8 p.m. So I had all that free time, to do what I wanted to do. So yeah, at the age of 13 is when I tried meth, and it was another, feel-good drug, It really felt like I got out of myself. At that time, I'm already running with gangs with that neighborhood. I have not yet got into that gang, but, part of my schooling, man, I being isolated in as special ed, right, in a different class than everybody else. That was another part of my list, right? Like, oh, special ed kid, right? They're gonna isolate me and put me in this class. So, like I wasn't the it kid, right? Like I wasn't the popular kid, but I met my daughter's mom, which my daughter's now 26 years old with 2 grandchildren. So I met her mom when I was in 6th grade. And she was the it girl. Like, nobody can mess with her, man. She would, she would get in fights. And to me, all that was attractive. And she paid attention to me. I was always this kid against the wall, always willing, just couldn't wait to run into class, right, and isolate from everybody else, because I was always made fun of how I walked. That the word faggot was used a lot. And for me, that was a really scary word, because I know I was being disrespected, but I didn't know how to respond to it. So I would shut down and I would just laugh when people would call me that. So part of my addiction, when my addiction started too, was that continued was ditching parties, man. When I met my daughter's mom, she was the it girl, right? Nobody would mess with her, and I always tend to gravitate to those people so I can feel protected, right? So I can feel like that it kid too, where nobody's gonna mess with me. So for me, that was another addiction prior to the actual drug, anything putting in my body, to hang around with people that were respected. So for me, once I got in a relationship with her, we would have ditching parties, because she wasn't pretty much obligated to go to work when she had to take care of her little brothers and sisters. So she would have to stay home to watch them. So we would call all the people like us, right? Wanted to do some drug, have some sex. So I remember having sex at probably 11 years old. Wow. We would have ditching parties at the house. There would be other people at that in different rooms. I would be in her room for the first time I tried it. And all I can think, honestly, was, what are they thinking, right? Like, do they know I'm doing this? Like, I wanted to be that popular kid, right? And it got me into a lot of problems, doing all that. It was just nonstop. A lot of my tattoos were were through those episodes, through those experiences, man. And it was, I would say it was a beautiful thing. Like, it was a beautiful start to where my family's at today with my grandchildren, But my addiction was just progressing at that time. I would go home really sleepy. My mom couldn't understand what was going on with me. I would shut the door. I would tell her, never, it's none of your business. I started disrespecting my mom. And at the age of 15 is when she got pregnant.
Damn.
Her mom was really accepted over it. So her mom was she was a big influence of me sticking around in my daughter's life. She was really supportive over me. She was a mother that understood me. She went through some addiction herself, so she understood what we were going through. She was a mother that I never had. Right, I had the Mexican little lady that barely spoke any English. So I was always embarrassed I was never grateful for what I was blessed with, the family that I was blessed with, and for me, so I always gravitated to other families, and it was really challenging. So so yeah, at the age of 15, my daughter's mom gets pregnant, and we stood together maybe about a year till my daughter was a year old. The battle with not knowing who I was being with guys and girls, and I did that behind her back. I gotta say that she was an amazing woman. Like, she was already a woman. She catered to me. She respected me. She did everything she could to keep our family together. But because of my addiction and not knowing who I was and not appreciating what I had to go in a different direction. I split my family. There was another add-on to in back of my thinking of feeling low and insecure and not feeling worthy. So I split my family. When my daughter turned a year, after that, I remember going through some real depression, man. My daughter, her and her mom, we agreed that she would have her a week, I would have her a week. When my daughter would stay with me, it was like life was amazing. I was like the best father, right? Making her food, buying her clothing, taking her out. When she would leave, I would go through this really bad depression where the only solution for me was to use drugs. At that time, I had already been introduced to methamphetamine, so that was my go-to drug, to feel good, to party, to go out, not really responsible, taking what I could from my mom, not paying rent, just grimy, just not, doing anything with my life. I had a lot of opportunities, man. But based on my perspective on myself and how low I felt about myself, then I didn't take advantage of those,
So you said you hung out with a lot of gang members, right? Did you ever become from the neighborhood?
I did.
Okay.
I became from the neighbor. I got into the neighborhood.
How old were you?
I was 14.
And a lot of people would look at you and they were like, "There's no way this was a gang member."
Yeah.
Because I've seen old pictures of you, and I was like, "This is Cesar, bro." Like you know what I'm saying? You're just like a completely different person, right? But I think a lot of that is like your identity crisis, bro. Trying to figure out and trying to fit in and try to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just I would say anybody who meets you for the first time would never guess that you were affiliated, that you were part of that kind of lifestyle, just the way you carry yourself, all that stuff. So, yeah.
I would never guess you're a grandfather.
No. Yeah, for our viewers, you guys can't, our listeners, you guys can't see him, but he looks very young.
And I'm still there sometimes, where like my appearance it changes, like what I wear, depending on who I'm hanging out with. Just that chameleon, always trying to fit in somehow, right? It still changes sometimes.
So, and we're going to talk about so let's talk about when things got bad.
Okay.
Right? Because we always talk about on the podcast how you said it, right? When you first went into that little fucking shed, right? Like everything was amazing, right? Like we go to parties, we fuck, we, do some lines, we smoke, right? And it's fun. Right, we get some Nas balloons out, right? Like all that stuff is fun. We drink, we get in fights, so on and so forth, right? But at some point, it's not fun. At some point, the one thing that makes life worth living kind of turns on you, right? Yeah. So let's kind of talk about that. When did things start getting hard for you? When did the addiction take a turn? When did your using take a turn?
Okay. So I remember the experience of not sleeping for a few weeks. My daughter was 14 years old. She was in my custody.
Okay.
And I was, I was still having a lot of fun. I remember that. And it wasn't until my first rehab. So I had an episode where I woke up from zoned out from not sleeping for days, right? And I remember my daughter not being at home, you know. So my family members tell me that, you know, I walked outside wanting to fight people, yelling at somebody, and I don't remember all that. So I guess my sister asked me to go back to sleep, and I did. So when I woke up, my daughter wasn't there for me to take her to school. And I remember being in IOP at the program that before we met.
Okay.
It wasn't too long until we met. And from there on is when I felt this emptiness, where I everything I tried, I thought everything I tried was like keeping the job, you know, if I keep this job, then I'll be okay, right? But after that, it's when it got really depressing for me. But it lasted for a very long time, you know. After going into a program and meeting you, I didn't stay clean after that. But I remember really running really empty. Right. And so as years went by, I had these patterns of, I got introduced into the rooms, into the 12 steps, and I couldn't stay put, you know. And back in 2011 is when I got introduced into the rooms through a court card. And for me, that wasn't enough, you know. I still had to have some experiences, but it wasn't fun anymore. I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop doing what I was doing. Repetitive pattern of getting a job, rebuilding, and tearing it back down. But in my point of view, like, I really believe I was going to be able to keep it this time. Right. And it wasn't until I met some great people, man, in the rooms, man. They were guiding me, trying to guide me, trying to keep me put. I entered like quite a few programs. I was in already my fourth program, and that's when it really. I was just running around really empty and dark. I always knew I was going to go back out, right? And wasn't the turning point, but it was where I knew things were like heading I was still headed in the wrong direction, because I just had this gut feeling all the time that I was going to use. So it wasn't until so I'm 19 months clean now.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's good stuff.
So in these programs, just real quick, were these all voluntary every time you went?
They were all, no, there was quite a few that, there were, no, maybe my last one was voluntary.
All the others were court ordered.
Yeah. The rest were all court ordered. There was in my head, it was like a choice, right? Like, oh, I'm doing this for me. But no, behind, I had to turn in some certificate of completion.
Yeah, dude, I thank God for that.
Yeah.
You know, the first 5 times I went to treatment, there was a judge or a PO or a social worker making me go. But finally, when it got bad enough, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, and it got miserable enough, and I was hurting enough, I knew where to go.
Yeah.
Because I had been assigned to all these places in the past. So that's cool. So the last time you went to treatment, when was that?
It was in 2021. But even then, after that, I didn't keep clean. It's when I reached out to Adam. I always was somehow connected to Adam. I believe he kept the same number, and that's how I stayed connected. We knew the same people, so that I always felt connected. So when I was in this program, I reached out to you. And I remember talking to you and asking you for help. And it was something that I really needed to humble myself and ask for help, because I was always embarrassed to let Adam know that, you know, I'm still not doing so well, right? Yeah. And for me, in my head, like, the pride always made me, like, it kept me from reaching out and asking for help. So when I had called you, I thought, you know, I felt like I really wanted this, right? Right. And then you introduced, so I moved back down. I was living up north in the Napa area, and I moved back down to Southern California, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was going to do it. And but I wasn't ready.
And I want to back up a little bit and kind of share a cool story for my experience in my recovery, right? Because it seemed like for a few years, you would be clean and I wasn't clean. I would be clean and you weren't clean because we both had that experience of going in and out, right? And 10 and a half years ago, I got clean. And I remember, I'm trying not to get emotional, but I remember seeing you at a meeting 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks clean. And I think you might have had like a few months. And I went to that meeting and we seen each other, and it was always good to see you, right? And I remember we talked, and he said, Adam, like, I've been praying for you every day. And you said, 2 weeks ago, God told me to stop praying for you. And I remember we were like thinking about it, and it was almost, and not the exact day that I got clean as the day that you stopped praying for me. And for me, man, those moments of silence for that, it still suffers, right? Because like a lot of people, man, they look at drugs, they look at alcohol, and like it's all funny games, but it's not. You know, it's a deadly disease that it's out to destroy everybody. You know, anybody who suffers from it, and just for me, early recovery, that was a big God shot because I still didn't know if I was going to stick around. I didn't know if this was like the time because just like you, man, I showed up to treatments and I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm never getting loaded again. And the next thing you know, like I have a pipe in my hand or a bottle in my hand or a blunt in my hand, and I'm right back to the races like I always am. And so I was still unsure, but I remember having that moment with you and just knowing that there was something bigger working in my life, because how can somebody pray for you every day and then for some reason stop, and it just happens to be the day or at least within a days of when you got clean. Yeah. And that's why I feel like we've always been connected. And for the last 10 and a half years, I kind of watched you go in and out. And I remember me and my brother George, you know, rest in peace, we went to go see you graduate from a program out in Pasadena, right? And I remember, and I think this plays a big part in your life and your struggle, right? Because you were playing straight, right? You were acting like you were straight. And I remember the conversation that me and George had in the car leaving there, and they're like, bro, like he's never going to really grasp recovery or grasp like a sense of life until he learns how to accept himself for who he is, bro. Right. And I think that's been a big part of your journey this time around is learning how to accept who you are as a person, bro. Yeah. You know what I mean? And just because of whatever belief systems we have, right? Like just because there's like the same sex stuff going on doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you're condemned or any of that. And that's something that me and you have worked on a lot. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so like, I think it's really important for anybody, man. Like I never liked who I was as a man, as a kid, as a boy. Like I never accepted me for who I was. And so I was always like trying to change the inside of me, hoping that the outside would change. And it never worked that way, you know? And it wasn't until I found some self-acceptance, and I'm sure you could relate to that a lot, is when we start to like really understand who we are as people and be okay with who we are, bro. I'm an emotional person. That's a negative thing in the streets, bro. That's not like nobody's like, oh, that dude's so emotional. That's so cool. No, like people just stop being a punk, stop being a weenie, stop like we don't cry. We hold our feelings in, you know what I'm saying? And today, man, like I get to embrace who I am, and I don't like if people judge me, that's okay, bro. That's okay. Right? Because I'm the one, bro, that goes home to my kids. I'm the one that works. I'm the one, like, I'm self-sufficient, bro. I live my own life. Like, the only person I have to live with at the end of the day is me. So I got to make sure that I'm happy with who I am, right? Yeah. So, yeah, but that story for me, bro, is like, and then when you called me when you were in treatment, I was like, this dude's fucked, bro. Because you would call me and your fucking brain, bro, was just so spagacked out, bro. You were just all over the place. And you had your moments where you didn't shut up, and then you had your moments where you didn't talk. You know what I mean? And I knew it was going to be a journey for you. And it's so amazing to kind of see where you're at now. So, like, now you have 19 months clean, yeah. Right? You got some work under your belt, right? Some step work, some sponsorships, some meetings, some service commitments, a God of your understanding, right? And so before we kind of move into the recovery part, man, I want to ask, what was your last relapse like, right? Because we were already working together, yeah, right? And you were doing everything that you were supposed to be doing, right? And so let's talk about that a little bit.
So I remember looking at the differences, right? So I was talking about how, like, you introduced me to people in the rooms, right? People that we were already connected back in 2011, and I was seeing all those people, and but there was something about me, and the friends that I have today in my life are the same people that I was running from, right?
Yeah.
And it was about the self-acceptance, right? Like, a God of my understanding is introducing me to some men that are living their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was seeing that, and I couldn't grasp on that. Like, I did not know what that felt like, right? But I remember still having a lot of anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of self-rejection. As soon as I met some people like I'm learning today, that I just couldn't trust myself, right? As soon as I get vulnerable, people get to know me, get to know the real side of me. Like, I still have to accept that side of me, right?
All right.
So it was really lonely for me. It was that always running, like our predecessor that you mentioned, George, right? He would always tell me, man. He says, Cesar, you're gay. Right? But I didn't want nobody to tell me anything, right? You're not going to tell me who I am, what I'm not, and all this. So I had this thinking, right? And that I will set myself apart. And then it wasn't until, I found myself alone, man, and you guys were all loving on me in ways of calling me, right?
Were you answering?
No.
I
was trying to block.
He blocked everybody except
somehow
for me,
people
bro.
were still trying to get in.
He blocked everybody except for me.
I was still, I still wanted to keep that hope, right, where I can still contact somebody, right? And so I found myself alone again, and I came back in, and I remember you telling me when I came back in, right, through those calls, right, my friend's not leaving me alone. It's the same people calling me, and I said, wow, there's something clicked where something I knew I had to change. My thinking wasn't working, right? And I remember you telling me that you had to reach out to your sponsor in order to get guidance, and because you didn't know what to do with me. And not knowing what other humans are going to be able to do with you, because you just can't get this, right? Like a pattern of just rebuilding your life and tearing it down. That's when the change started to happen, man. I started to look within, I told myself, like, that kid, right? Like, I had to say that I'm bisexual just to feel accepted by the straight crowd, right? So I always lived a double life, because I had a crowd that would love me because they drink. I would have a crowd that they loved me because I used meth. I had a crowd because I was gay. I had a crowd because I was straight. So I was all this, and I had to look at all that. And I remember the step work, man. It was really where I started doing some writing. You had me do a writing on relapse and recovery, and all that reflection, right, of what I was doing to myself, I was able to make a conscious decision for myself that I would choose one side, right, and for me, right, to feel to find out who I am, man, to get into this process of learning and finding out who I really am, right, and since then I've been on this journey, man. So that took a big turn. Something happened looking within myself. Made a big change, and I had to have this experience where I'm grateful for this last relapse, because without this relapse, I don't think I would have been able to look within, right? Because I still would have looking for outside acceptance of who do you think I am, what do you who do you want me to be? So that's when I really started diving into the work. I started to get really honest.
Yeah,
I would call you for every little thought.
I remember.
And I had to do this. And I felt like it is something I had to do.
You called me every day for what, 9 months?
For a little bit longer, at least up to my year.
Of at least a year, every day.
Every day.
And I remember when you stopped calling me, right? And I was like, I hope Cesar's okay. I hope he's all right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was panicked, bro. I was like shell shocked for fucking, your relapse, bro, right? Yeah. But the biggest thing that we talked about when he got back was you have to be honest, bro, right? Recovery is not about like feeling good all the time or being grateful all the time or like always being in like a loving mood, right? It's about like being fucked up and being able to be honest with that and be vulnerable with somebody, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? People, we're grateful addicts, right? We're grateful recovering addicts, right? And that's cool. Most days.
Yeah.
And that's cool, right?
Yeah.
We should practice gratitude. We should practice positivity, right? We've been so negative and so ungrateful our whole life. We need to practice that, but we also need to practice being honest, right? Because the biggest lie ever told is, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we always say. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm fine.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I told my buddy, I was like, bro, for someone who's so humble, you do say I know a lot, bro. You know what I'm saying? So it's really cool, bro. And you know, lately we talk enough, but not like every day, and everything's not a crisis anymore.
Yeah.
And I just remember you always saying like, why is this so bad? And you know, in those moments, I wish I could just like touch you guys and you could see how like my recovery was, because everything was a crisis in early recovery. Everything, you know what I'm saying? I tell people, call me when you stub your toe and you're mad at the table, bro. You know what I'm saying? Because that you know, you hold a resentment and it's just going to end up bad, bro, right? Yeah. So what do you feel like was challenging for you in early recovery or even today?
Challenge for me.
Mm-hmm.
Staying within the fellowship. It's a constant battle to feel that self-acceptance, to say that I belong, right? I started, things started to change where I'm at today, even to gather with other friends and even call them friends, right? So one of our friends, he says, can you just say that I'm your bestie? And I'm no, I don't really like that word. Bestie. What are we in high school? But you know what? There was some insight. You know, there was some insight for me. You know, to let people in, right, and to trust myself in that. You know, that if I call you and something goes wrong, you know that the world's not going to end, right? My life is not going to end. And so back to your question, it was. Back to your question, I just had a blank. Back to your question.
Okay. That was the most challenging, right? Staying within the fellowship.
Staying within the fellowship.
Right.
Yeah, staying within the fellowship. Yeah.
So we're going to wrap this thing up here in a couple minutes, but I had one question I wanted to ask you. What do you do to stay clean today? What's your program look like today?
Today. For me is a 10-step, right? You know, at first I was, for me, that being in and out of the program, having several sponsors, I always gravitated to doing an inventory. I'm still squirrely about it, right? Like my writing. I mean, I don't want to talk about like writing, and I can't even understand my own writing and stuff, but I do it, you know, because I know there's something that works in there. Like being able to self-reflect is a major, what helps me to change, to be a better person, right? To look within helps me. So if I don't look within, it's when I start looking really, when I revert back to that isolated little kid that doesn't feel worthy to be, to accept any invites. So holding on to the fellowship, man. Holding on to the people in the fellowship, building relationships regardless of what I think, trusting the process, and showing up to meetings, man. And still making those calls, right? Still making those calls and making those calls even to say, how are you doing today? Now it's not always like I'm in crisis, so that's big. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a mix.
Do you have anything else?
I do. I have one more thing.
Okay.
Right? So obviously your life was in shambles, right? Bad relationship with your daughter, right? Yeah. What is your life like now? And what is your relationship like with the people that you love and care about the most?
My relationship, it's more of letting others be, right? The more that I've accepted my family member, like to just let things be sometimes, that it's okay, right? My daughter doesn't block me anymore because you know, she's at the age of 26 and I still want to tell her what to do and how to do things, you know? For me, that's a constant practice and it keeps me close, even with my own mother today, you know? We have deep conversations where I can actually be around my mother and accept her to where she's at in her recovery process, right? not as a member in the program, but as just a person, a human being, right? To accept her where she's at. I can sit down for breakfast and be there for long. So just like I looking back within, right? Listening, trying to listen to my family members, and I'm still learning, man. Like I really want to put my input in understanding where I should put an input as a father, as a grandpa, to show some type of guidance and discipline, because I was really undisciplined, and I know that really affected me. Just acceptance of where they're at and my friends are at, and just trusting that process. That it's okay to be quiet sometimes. Never had a voice, right? So now that I'm trusting this voice a little bit more, I wanna. It's okay to always sometimes put my opinion out there, but I don't know. Sometimes it works just to listen. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you, Cesar. What an honor and privilege it is to have you on the podcast. And yeah, that's it.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes.
Looking at the skylight, thinking of my life like looking for the right state of mind to get my time right. I just hope my time's right. Lost up in the limelight, but you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
You know, it's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you out forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.